Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview. Every single week, I interview top real estate professionals, top entrepreneurs, and strip top badasses that are out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, you guys got another rock star guest here on the podcast. Our guest today, Dirk van Reenen. So Dirk early on got a start in real estate, became a very successful real estate agent, then evolved into becoming a top team leader, had a lot of success as a team leader, and then had an opportunity to become the CEO of one of the largest and fastest growing Keller Williams brokerages in the entire nation. And after that, found his really true calling in life and in business, where today he is the owner of BERGflow. And his company today, they work with top entrepreneurs all over the planet, helping them create and build an extremely effective and powerful team so they can truly go out there and grow and scale their business. So today, guys, in this podcast, Dirk breaks down how he's personally created success, not just in the business world, but how he also found how to create personal success and business success congruently. And we also go deep into what it takes to go out there and hire and lead a high producing team, how to go out there and find amazing talent, make sure that you have the right fits for the right positions, right? How to lead, how to inspire, how to motivate, and continue to grow and scale your business. Now, you guys are going to love this podcast interview. Well, real quick, before we jump in, if you haven't already, make sure that you snag my newest book, Dominate Your Real Estate Business, Top Tips from a Top Producer. These are top tips, methods, and strategies that I've utilized in my personal real estate business that have allowed me to become one of the top realtors and team leaders on the planet. It's 100% free, nothing being sold. You can go download the digital free copy right now at joshuasmithfreebook.com. Again, joshuasmithfreebook.com. All right, let's jump on into this amazing interview with Dirk. All right, Dirk, my friend, welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Appreciate being here and excited to chat.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to have you on, dude. I mean, you're a guy that's created tremendous success yourself, and in the real estate space as well as outside the real estate space with your business ventures. And, today, I mean, you're coaching so many top level entrepreneurs from all over the place on how to lead and grow their teams, lead themselves at a higher level as well as their teams. And just really excited to be able to pick your brain and learn from you, man. And before we get jumping into what you're doing today, I'm always really intrigued in our guest journeys that led them here in the first place, man. So if you rewind the clocks, how did this entrepreneur journey start in the first place?
Yeah, I think for me, I was born and raised in South Africa, and that's where my family's from. So growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur, and I saw the blueprint of somebody that's working for themselves. And he had a couple of businesses growing up, and some were, failures and some were successes. So I think I saw that blueprint of, it's okay to fail. You don't have to play it safe. You don't have to go work for somebody. You don't have to go get a job. And he ended up building pretty good success in South Africa. And then in 1996, we moved to the U.S. I was 14 years old. And in that process, we really started over with nothing. So by the time we got to the U.S. and got settled in a small town in Texas. My dad had $500 in his pocket with a family of five, me being the youngest at 14, my sister was 16, my brother was 18. And at that point, it was just sheer drive and determination and work to essentially start over in a new country. So at 14 years old, after school every day, I was doing farm and ranch work, and that's what I did on the weekends, and that's what I did every summer. I didn't have the traditional summer break, hey, we're going to the beach and doing all this kind of stuff. For me, it was waking up early in the morning at 5 a.m. and getting on a tractor or working cattle or something. It was a farming and ranching community, so that's kind of what we did. But I always knew that I wanted to be a business person and wanted to be an entrepreneur. So while I was going to school, I had the opportunity to buy a business, and it was a business that I'd worked at and managed. And I got into the ski and snowboard industry. And I worked in that industry from, bought the business when I was 21 and did that till I was 27, had an epic failure. So at 27 years old, I was already married and lost the business. I was $300,000 in debt, had nothing to show for it. And really got kicked in the teeth as an adult and had to start climbing out of that really deep hole of debt and, paying people off. And during that time, I actually got into the auction business and started doing just different business liquidations, started doing some real estate auctions and learned that business. And that's actually how I got into real estate is got my real estate license in 2008 and just did real estate auctions for a while, got into a traditional brokerage. But, in that time, this is probably about 2010, 11, 12, like we were still in massive amounts of debt because, for me, it was the right thing to do to pay everybody off that I owed money to, all of our vendors and landlord and all that kind of stuff. So filing bankruptcy wasn't an option for me. I'm not saying that's not a good option for people, but for me, it wasn't. And, we just went through, probably about a 4 or 5 year hellhole of just trying to dig out of this. And the only thing that I knew how to do during that time was work hard. And I was raised to work hard, and I had that hard work ethic coming from, farming and ranching. And, went through this time that for several years, just working really, really hard and trying to build an auction business and trying to sell real estate. And in that time, I was hardly ever home when my son Jackson was little. Got to the point in my marriage that it was very strained, and got to the point that my wife and I even separated for a week. I moved out of the house and said, "Hey, we're done here." And luckily came to my senses and we got back together. But all of that was just part of this like stress of just having the pressure being cranked on so hard and not knowing what to do except work really hard. So I knew something was missing in my blueprint, right? I was fortunate enough to be taught some amazing lessons growing up, but I knew something was missing. And kind of it came to a head one night when I just realized, I said, look, there's something wrong here. If I feel like I'm a smart guy, I feel like I work really hard, I'm really dedicated to what I'm doing, and yet I'm not able to get out of this hellhole of debt. I'm working all the damn time, things aren't moving forward. And I just decided at that point, I was about 30 years old, and just decided, I have to relearn some things. And I just started studying successful people and, kind of found Tony Robbins during that time and just started thinking differently for the first time in my life. And all of a sudden, like a lot of things started changing. And I took a class in 2012 called Recruit Select, and it was offered through Keller Williams. And I joined Keller Williams at the end of 2012. And literally a week after I joined, I went to this class. And for the first time in my life, like the super highway just opened up in front of me, because I saw like, okay, hey, how do you actually get into business with talented people? How do you hire somebody? How do you train them? How do you lead them? And, for me, those were kind of things like if I had an issue, my answer was, I'll just work harder. Like I will outwork the next person. Like if you think you can work hard, I'll just work harder. And I'd hired a few people here and there. And obviously in my ski shop days, I used to hire people, but that's a very different kind of person that you're hiring to work at a ski and skateboard, snowboard shop versus hiring somebody to do professional services like real estate, right? So there was a big learning curve. And I remember the first time I hired an assistant, I hired this girl that used to kind of do marketing for hotels in the town that I was. And, she kind of started and I kind of sat there and I was working and I just kind of look at her and I'm like thinking like, why isn't she working? And I didn't even think of like, I got to train her. Like that's how bad I was at it. Right. So for me, it was like a godsend when this like class showed up and something clicked for me that day. And I just said, hey, this is the path for me to build my next level of life. And for me, I went, from at that point selling about 27 houses a year, that 2 years later, we sold about 120 houses, and I built a team that now started giving me my time freedom back. So started making a little bit of money and started having a little bit more time freedom. And then had the opportunity to go into leadership with Keller Williams and relocated to Houston, ran an office for them here, did really well. Got relocated to Columbia, Maryland to run one of their top offices worldwide, did really well there. And by the end of 2016, I just got to the point where I realized like I wasn't on the right path. I had a real estate team that was running in multiple cities. I was running this really successful brokerage, but I wasn't happy getting out of bed in the morning. And so made the decision that I was going to walk away from all of that. And my dream and my passion was to work with small businesses, with service-based businesses, and help them, build the kind of businesses that could get them out of that grind of being stuck in their business and being, shredded to pieces and letting their health go and letting their relationships go their sense of life and adventure and fun. And so I started the company BERGflow in January of 2017, and at the end of 2016, we moved back from Maryland to Houston and started BERGflow, and we've been doing that for a little over 3.5 years now, and we've been really blessed to work with about 180 companies now, and just really show them a better way of building businesses that's truly based on the leader kind of stepping out of the way and creating the space for other people to come into the business. And then how do you actually go through that? Like, what does a tactical application look like for you to recruit the right people in and, help them start succeeding in their strengths in a business? So for me, like that whole process has just completely changed my life. And since 2013, I've been an absolute student of it. And that's typically what I study is team building, leadership development, and a lot of psychology in that as well, behavioral, cognitive, things like that, to really understand like what's the behind the scenes kind of playbook and data behind building high performance teams. So that's it in a nutshell, man.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. What a wild journey, dude. So I'm really curious, man. When you were at that point, because with Keller Williams, you got to a point where, man, I mean, that's a great gig, right? Doing really well for yourself. You're out of this debt that's growing, that's expanding. And, but you hit a point in life where, you mentioned you weren't happy getting out of bed in the morning, and you took some bold risks and so forth. How did you get that clarity? Because a lot of people kind of get in that rut, and then they get to a point where, they think it's too much of a risk to maybe pivot and so forth. And a lot of people just don't know what would make them happy. When you were going through that, man, I'm really interested to just kind of find out how you got that clarity of knowing what that next journey was going to be, because you're on this big success trajectory too, through that new career path.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing. When I went up to Maryland, the office that I was the CEO or team leader of there was a really high-minded office, and the level of leadership was really, really high there. So for me, there was a learning curve kind of going from, running a brokerage with 240 agents in Houston to going up and running a brokerage with over 400 agents in Columbia, Maryland. And in that time, there was all these things that I kind of were able to work through and learn, and kind of tactical and strategy, and the kind of playbook side of like being a leader, the knowledge side. But when I went up there, it was time to kind of internalize what it truly meant to become a leader, and how to really do the internal work on yourself and do the internal work on other people. And for me, it was a hard time, right? Because I mean, it felt like I tell people in 2016, like I was ripped apart. And I tell people, like, it's crazy. I said, look, I cried more in that 1 year than I had my entire life put together. And I was raised in South Africa, which is kind of a really, like, in a way that it's like a very, masculine type culture. Like, it doesn't matter if your like arm gets chopped off, you don't cry. If your heart gets broken, you don't cry. Like, you just, and that was kind of the blueprint that I grew up with. So when I got to the point where I really started looking inside of myself and saying like, hey, it's time for me to really start getting to know myself, and figuring out like where are the ways that I've always judged myself and condemned myself and beat myself up. Because I started understanding like all those things that I were doing to myself, I was automatically doing to other people, whether I realized it or not. And, it's kind of thought of, on the airplane, they say, put your own mask on and then you can help others. If you can't start understanding yourself and loving yourself and having grace for yourself, you can't have that for others, So I started kind of coming to this realization of like, that's kind of what was happening. And I was really blessed to have some incredible people around me that were mentoring me and coaching me and really loving me through that whole process. And that was very foreign for me as well, because this wasn't like, business performance coaching or, productivity or team building and stuff like this. This was way more on an intimate level. And I had actually one of the top leadership coaches with all in Keller Williams named Cherie Lowry. And I mean, she typically only worked with like Keller Williams executives, in Austin, but I was lucky enough to get her as a coach. And, between her and my leader, just kind of went through this process. And I think kind of on the back end of that, life had changed for me, like the way that I saw things, the way that I related to people. And for the first time in my life, I was way more open to actually being relational over transactional. Right up to that point in my life, like, I mean, I was willing to move things forward because of sheer hard work. And if I had a goal in front of me, like, I would just do whatever it took to move towards, to get the goal done, to turn and burn people. Like, for me, it was about hitting the numbers. And that's kind of how I was trained and how I was, kind of, just productivity based. So for the first time in my life, like, that started kind of peeling away a little bit. And this new side of me emerged, that for the first time in my life, I was able to, like, start having a true relationship with myself, where I could actually love myself and care for myself instead of just, beating myself up. And I mean, it's the kind of stuff like, if I didn't get out of bed at like 5 a.m. in the morning, if it was like 5:10 or 5:15, like, I would say, like, Dirk, you're a piece of shit. You're not motivated. You're not going to make it. I mean, I would just at 5 o'clock in the morning, I would start beating myself up because I was 10 minutes behind schedule of this, like, highly productive lifestyle of just crushing it all the time. And the external world, it looked really good. It's like I had this, like, incredible upward trajectory and all of these amazing things happening. And then yet inside I felt empty. I wasn't fulfilled. And I remember, dude, went downstairs one morning to make coffee. And as I'm pouring the coffee, I'm like, oh, it's October 2nd today. And it's like my son's birthday. It was his 8th birthday. And it took me back, like, it was just like a lightning bolt that, like, hit my head, like a moment of true epiphany. And it took me back to, like, when he was 3 years old. And that was the time that I found Tony Robbins, right? So the first couple of years he was alive, like, I was hardly ever at home. And then things started changing for me during that learning experience. But I remember I set these 5-year goals, and I wrote these goals down about things that in 5 years, I want to be able to do this with my family, and I want to be able to do this. And one of the things that I wrote down, which was like, just like this ridiculously big goal, was like, I want to be able to go on like a 3-month sabbatical with my family, just drop everything and be able to go away with my family for 3 months. Right. And that morning that hit me, and I said, I'm so far from being able to do that, you know, this was what was important to me. Like, I'd missed so much time with my family. I wanted to spend more time with my family. Yes, I wanted to be successful in business, but that, like, I wasn't able to show up authentically in the things that were truly important to me at the deepest level. And it wasn't much of a decision after that. Like, the decision had been made when I was willing to authentically look inside of myself and say, what's most important? Is it to, kind of be known as this person that can, like, build these brokerages and do all this kind of stuff? And, and of course, like, when you're succeeding in a world like that, in an ecosystem like that, like, it's amazing because there's so much continual affirmation and praise and visibility and all this kind of stuff. And I absolutely adore so many people in the Keller Williams world. Like, that world opened up so much for me. But at the same time, I realized, like, what I authentically wanted was not available in that world at that time. And I walked away from having ownership in that brokerage, in a title company. I mean, I walked away from everything, left a lot of wealth on the table, and just said, look, it's worth it for me to authentically walk down the path that I know is going to be right for me. And 2017 was a hard year, man, because I mean, it's kind of, again, you leave an ecosystem like that, and, like, people think you drop into, like, some kind of black hole, like you don't exist anymore, right? So I went from having, like, a ton of interaction with a lot of people, a ton of travel, like, to just kind of being like, where did Dirk go? He fell off the face of the earth. But I just kind of went a little bit more quiet, internal, and I started doing work that was really important to me, that I really connected with, and I was just consistently pushing things forward. And even that first year that I started my new business, I was able to take 6 weeks off of work that year. Took a 3-week international trip, had never done something like that before, and started spending a lot more time with my family, started building deeper relationships with people, and started actually doing relational business. And I said, look, I'm never going to do transactional business again, because in that moment, like, even though if you win in transactional business, it's not fulfilling. And for me, it wasn't worth it. So I got really clear about some absolute non-negotiables for me. And I said, look, it's almost like the Ray Dalio book Principles, right? It's like, look, I'm going to live my life according to a certain set of principles. And if something doesn't fit into those principles, it's going to be a really easy no for me. So that's what I started doing. And I took, all of the experience and knowledge that I had. And, around that time, 2016, Keller Williams dropped the licensing rights to RSTMM, which was the class that I had learned, and they adopted a new system. And I went to corporate consulting, and I said, hey, I want to product. I love it. It's changed my life. I want to help other people with it. And got the licensing rights for it and started working with companies. And since then, we've developed our own system for doing that kind of work. But that's kind of how it happened for me, man. Like it was like just this lightning bolt of like realizing like I wasn't on the right path.
Yeah, that's so amazing, dude. It's, I mean, number one, it's awesome that you were able to slow down enough to be able to do that reflection. I mean, in this fast-paced world that we live, most people don't really slow down and really think about what will make them happy, what will create fulfillment, and so forth. And what's crazy is that was probably, from an external standpoint, the most success you had in your professional world. So the rest of the
Absolutely,
world,
yeah.
it looked like it was, so amazing, but you're more miserable internally than you were when you were $300,000 in debt.
Yeah, I mean, it was, dude, there's something wrong if you're kind of hitting really, really high level success and you don't want to get out of bed in the morning because you're depressed, right? There's something wrong in that equation. And I think for me, fortunately, it wasn't a hard decision at that point, right? Because it was like, look, I can either keep going down this road and again, it wasn't, for me, it just wasn't the right environment. It wasn't the right thing. It doesn't mean it's not right for other people, but I needed to kind of walk down the authentic path that was right for me. So that was the decision I made.
Yeah, I love it. Well, now you've been able to create not only a financially successful business, but something that creates that fulfillment and gives you the things that you really want in life. I think I don't think any of us live to work. We work so that we can go out there and live the life we want to live.
That's
And
it.
doing it, man. I love it, brother.
Yeah.
So the first thing, man, you said that you committed to never doing transactional kind of work again. You want to do more relational work. For those that are maybe watching, listening, that don't really understand, because we, in the business world and in real estate, like we get kind of KPI to death. Right? Okay, we got
Yeah.
leads, X calls, X, whatever. I mean, and I'm not saying that those things are important either to not pay attention, they might be important to pay attention to and so forth, but what do you really mean by focusing on relational versus transactional and the impact that that's had for you?
Yeah, I mean, first, and great point, because look, KPIs are important, right? They help us create the through lines to reach success. But the difference here is with transactional business, it's the numbers and the dollars were ahead of the people. And on the relational side, it's when the people are ahead of the dollars and the numbers. And that's a switch that was made for me, because I mean, before it was kind of like, look, you can turn and burn people. Like if somebody's just not the right person, just turn and burn them, get somebody else, do whatever is necessary to kind of hit the KPIs and hit the goals. And then it was like, look, I want to be able to, if somebody's just not nailing it right off the bat, it's not because they're a bad person or not committed. Maybe they just need a little bit more help. Maybe they need to be coached a little bit more. Maybe I need to understand more of like what's happening in their whole home life and how to help them win, right? So it was more about really tuning in with who the people are that we're working with and like, what do they actually need? What do they actually want? What are their desires? So even, with the clients that we work today is like, we're way more picky about who we work with today. And I mean, even in the real estate world, I think like that's significant because people think that they need every single lead out there to build their business. And what I've learned is that a lot of times people actually probably need fewer leads than they actually think. But what they need is they need better relationships with the people that they are already doing business with, and the better relationships with the people that they are in business with. So one is have really great relationships with your team. And secondly, have really great relationships with your clients. And, if you really look at it from the standpoint of like, man, I really want to serve this person and help them with what they need help with, it's going to be more fulfilling for you on the journey, as opposed to saying like, hey, I got this client and my job is just to get them to the closing table, get this transaction done and be over with it. Like probably like the first like 2-3 years that I was in business, I never talked to a client after a closing, right? It was just like, I didn't know that you're supposed to do that. Like I thought you were just supposed to go find somebody else to do business with, right? So that was around 2013, like when my business like really blew up. I was like, oh, okay, like I should actually talk to somebody after closing. I should stay in touch with them, right? Keep talking to them. But I think the difference is like people can understand if you're doing transactional business or relational business. They know. And you could think like, oh, we're going to kind of bullshit our way through this, and I'm going to make them feel special. But they know there's a difference between like actually caring for somebody and pretending that you're caring for them because you need to get a transaction done. And people can smile it from a mile away. And I think when, as an organization, it becomes your DNA to do relational business. And that doesn't mean that you don't pay attention to the KPIs. It doesn't mean that you drive hard for your goals, but there's a different state of doing it. It's a different way of handling a conversation. It's a different way of sending an email. It's a different way of handling that conflict point. I mean, those things matter, right? So it's about putting the people first, and then the dollars and the numbers come second, versus driving everything according to the dollars and numbers, and the people come second.
Yep. Yeah, I love that, man. And what I love about having you on the podcast, dude, is you've created a lot of success as a real estate agent, and then a team leader yourself, as well as coaching, mentoring, and consulting, so many other agents and team leaders, and now entrepreneurs and all these different industries. And so you're a dude that's done it and helped so many at such a high level. And, our audience are primarily real estate agents, right? Team leaders, individual real estate agents, broker owners, and so forth. And when they're looking to grow their business, because it gets to a point where, man, you can only do so much by yourself, right? And, the most common thing that I hear from team leaders or broker owners is their big struggle with finding good help and good staff, teammates, and so forth. And, where when it comes to being a great leader, where does it really start? I mean, is it internal leadership where it starts with yourself, or if we start kind of reverse engineering this, for that person that's looking to grow and scale that team, where does it start?
Yeah. So I think here's the important thing that I look at, right? And when you start out doing something like that, essentially what you're doing is you're being trained as either a great technician or a great salesperson. And technician is going to be anything really that's related to service or kind of a product, right? And the salesperson is the one that sells it, right? So real estate's a little bit of combination of that. Hey, there's some technical work that you do, and there's some sales work that you do. But the challenge is that when you really want to go towards leadership, it's a different skill set than the technical and the sales stuff. And a lot of people want to go into leadership using their toolbox and their skill set from the technical and the sales type experience. They're like, because I'm really good at selling real estate, I'm automatically going to be a good leader. I can teach other people how to do that. The challenge is when you go to leadership, it's more about doing internal work, right? If you do a lot of like the sales or technical, it's a little bit more about your external type skill and the way that you think about things and focus things. Leadership is going to be all about becoming more aware of who you are on the inside, how you function, and then also being able to start relating that to other people's internals. So I always tell people, look, leadership is you doing internal work on yourself and doing internal work on other people. And that's where the switch is a little bit different, because it's different kind of work and it's hard in a different kind of way. So people sometimes try to apply their success principles from the sales or technical side to the success principles of leadership, and they're different principles most of the time. So I think that the first part is just kind of being willing to understand that, hey, I'm going to have to do some ongoing internal work with me and some ongoing internal work on other people. And the thing about it is, like, for me, it started off like when I started becoming better at leadership. It's when I started giving myself more grace, when I stopped beating myself up. Because what was happening is, like, I was just beating myself up based on some kind of crazy standards, I guess, that were in my mind that were probably never attainable. And I was judging everybody else according to those standards. So because these standards were almost like just unattainable, right? Because I couldn't attain my own kind of whatever bullshit kind of standards I had, I was judging everybody else according to that, and nobody else was ever good enough, got it done fast enough, could meet my expectations. And so I had to kind of go through this process of saying, like, hey, if I really kind of have more grace for myself and grace for others, can I actually build the kind of life that I want? Because that was the thing, is like, maybe if I don't drive so hard all the time, can I actually live the life that I want? That was the big question in my mind. And I think a lot of top producers struggle with that. At what point do I not have to just drive so hard all the time? And does that mean that the opportunities aren't going to be there? But what I learned is that, look, if I can start understanding the ways that I'm actually self-sabotaging myself, because most of the time it's not the market or your competition or some kind of technology or anything like that that's keeping you from higher levels of success. It's the way that you think and your belief systems around who you are and what you deserve and what you don't deserve and what your place is in the world. So leadership is about a process of discovering what those internal beliefs are. And almost all the time, we don't know what they are. They're called blind spots. It's like we don't know what we don't know. So your job as a leader is, one, get around people that can help you uncover your blind spots, that can help you see the things that you aren't able to see within yourself. And then as a leader to others, what you want to do is start helping other people recognize their blind spots and how are they being held back. And it's a different type of work. So I think for me, if I were to tell somebody like, hey, where's the shift going to be? It's going to be like, just realize it's different type of work. It's hard in a different kind of way, but it's the most valuable type of work, because when you are able to truly help other people succeed and move forward in their life in ways that when they're getting stuck, the level of value that you are injecting into the world is significantly higher than anything you can do from the sales or technical standpoint. So because of that, that's where you're going to find higher levels of income and higher levels of time freedom. It's from the leadership side of it, right? I mean, we can see this in traditional type companies, right? If we look at how much CEOs get paid versus anybody else in the company, it's astronomically higher, because typically CEOs have had to go through that process of learning that internal leadership where they can work on themselves and on others.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Powerful stuff, man. Yeah. I always say that the hardest learning lesson in my real estate career was, going from realtor to team leader, and thinking that because I was a successful individual real estate agent, that I could be a successful team leader, and the two really had nothing to do with each other. And man, it was a tough and long learning lesson for sure, man. You mentioned when you made this shift, from leaving the KW world to what you're doing now today, that you came up with your own internal principles, if you will. How important do you think that is for somebody before they start going down this leadership journey, and so forth, and growing their teams to come up, whether you call them principles, whether you call them core values that you're going to live your business life by? I mean, how important is that?
I think it's massively important. I think it's almost like a non-negotiable for somebody to do that, because what happened is I actually built a real estate team that was successful, and it got to the point where I didn't even really like the business anymore. I didn't like some of the people I worked with. I didn't like our colors, logo, like all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, wow, you can actually build a successful business that you don't actually like. So, for me, when I started BERGflow, I just sat down and said, look, before I do anything in this business, I'm gonna have to decide who we are going to be and what we're going to be about. And for us, that has to kind of be the guiding force in who we work with, how we do work. And I think it's massively important for people to sit down and authentically look at themselves and say, what is going to be most important for me in who I am? Because I think it's so easy, especially in the real estate world, to get caught up. There's so many examples of successful people. And of course, there's so many people out there telling people how to do it and what to do, and everybody's selling a course and online this and like, but the challenge is, until you authentically know who you are and what you want, you can follow a successful program and start building success, but you may still wake up not being happy and something's missing, right? So I think the closer that you can actually be to walking that line of congruency, meaning that I'm living the life that I'm supposed to be living based on who I am, what my strengths are, what my gifts are, what my internal desires are. The closer that you can walk that line, the more fulfillment you're going to have. And for me, the more congruency you have, the more power you have, right? Like if you talk about just the power and the magnetism and the creativity and everything that you're putting into your work, the closer you can be to like authentically being you, the more powerful it's going to be. And the other thing that does is it attracts the right people to you. And that's something I heard a podcast years ago from Grant Cardone, and like there's some of Grant Cardone stuff that I love, and then some stuff that I'm just like, I just don't connect with at all, right? So, but I did connect on this, and he was talking about creating the polarity in your life of attracting the right people and pushing the wrong people away. And sometimes I think as real estate agents, there's this thought of like, I got to work with everybody. And if I have a chance at hiring somebody, I should just hire them because we need somebody right now. Or if this person wants me to sell their house, I have to sell their house because it's another deal. And the truth is that the more authentic you are in who you are, the easier it's going to be for you to attract the right people, the right opportunities, the right circumstances into your life, and the easier it's going to be for things to be a repellent as well. And I think when you look at people that are highly successful, they're typically going to be people that, aren't going to be vanilla in the way that they operate. They're going to be, there's going to be enough of a polarity that they're either going to attract people, like people love doing business with them, or people just don't connect with them at all and don't do business with them. And I think people try to be everything to everyone because they believe that that's how they have to be, because there's not enough in the world for them to start niching down and being like, look, here's who I am, here's who I love to work with, and this is what we do. And if it doesn't fit for you, then that's cool. We'll go work with somebody else. And I think like that's one of the most powerful things that people can do, is create that level of clarity in who they are and what they do and who they want to work with. Because all of a sudden, when you show up in that way, you'll find that you're going to attract the right people. And again, in the real estate world, like the thing about it is, for a lot of agents, you don't have to do 10,000 transactions a year, right? I mean, even if you're a really big team, man, look at 1,000 transactions a year. I mean, that's a lot of transactions. You don't have to go out and find 200,000 or 300,000 people to do, 1,000 transactions for. So narrow your focus on who you really want to work with and start speaking your language, start being more authentic in who you are. And what you're going to see is you're going to start attracting the right people and repelling the wrong people. And I think that's a huge, huge part of it, because if you're going through life with the wrong people, everything is harder. There's more drama, there's lower performance, there's not as much fulfillment, there's a lot of time being wasted. And at the end of the day, it's just not going to work out as well of like being in business with the right people and doing business with the right people.
Yep. Yeah, I love that, dude. So then, when it comes to going out there and finding the right people, because I mean, there's, attracting, you talked about attracting and attracting the right people, repelling the wrong people. But look, there's times where we still need to go out there and find that talent and so forth for those positions. I mean, what are some of the key things? Because again, I talk to team leaders that have rolled through, let's just say 3 admin in the last 12 months, trying to find that right person. And,
right.
What are some of the key things to when you're ready to make those hires, to go out there and finding that right person, and also maybe things to raise red flags so you maybe know that they're not the right person for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is build a profile. Right, so really get clear on who you're looking for and what they're going to be doing in the business. Right, that's number one. Because if you are going out there trying to hire somebody and you don't have a profile of who you're looking for, then you don't know what you're going to be recruiting towards. Right, and I mean, if you look at pro sports has so many good examples of how to do these kind of things really well. Like when they go to recruit somebody, they know exactly what the fit is in what the team looks like, and they may have to go scout out 1,000 players to find the 100 that they really want to watch, to find the 10 that they need to have conversations with, to hire the one that they really need for the team. But I think a lot of times, and we don't think that way when we run businesses. We're like, oh, like when I need somebody, I'll just go find somebody then. And one of the most powerful things you can do is actually build what we call a talent acquisition pipeline. So think about this. And on the transactional side, again, it makes a lot of sense that we got to have a database and we got to be lead generating, and that we're making calls and we're sending out emails and we're on social media and all that kind of stuff to find clients. But are you applying those same principles to finding talent? Because the exact same principles that get you leads on the real estate transaction side are going to be the exact same principles that get you leads on the human side of it. The only difference is it's a little bit different in going through a selection process and finding those people. So one of the things that's really going to be good is, really looking at the position. And one of the things that I'm a huge advocate of is behavioral matching to the position. I think like that's one of the first things that sets you up for really great success, is knowing what kind of behavioral pattern is going to be really right for this job. Because if I even go find a really great person, they're driven, they want to succeed, they want to do a good job in the role, they're learning based, but I put them in a job that's not behaviorally matched for them, they're going to start experiencing job discomfort, and the level of stress and anxiety and frustration, everything is going to start building very quickly into the role. A lot of times that's why people hire somebody and things are really awesome for the first 2 weeks, month, and then things start kind of going off the tracks, is because there's a behavioral mismatch, right? So that's one thing that I think is really important. There's a lot of different things that people can use, different systems out there to do behavioral matching, but that's one thing that I would really recommend that people look at is how do we behavioral match people for a role? And then, one of the things that we recommend is just build that lead generation pipeline. Talk to people that you know. But I was actually, right before I came on the call, I was talking to somebody that runs kind of an empire for somebody that owns, I think, 13 brokerages. They've got about 5,000 agents, and this guy kind of runs that universe plus some private equity and some other stuff. And we're talking about, hiring, and we're talking about kind of asking the people, like, who do you know that I should be talking to about this position? But the challenge is sometimes when a lot of people that you're connected to are business owners and other entrepreneurs, everybody is looking for help at the same time. So sometimes when you're asking your network, hey, who do you know, you're not really going to get names, right? So I think that by using things like LinkedIn Recruiter and Indeed today, that there is an amazing amount of people out there that are looking for positions. The question is, have you developed a strategy, on how to convert people from being out there on that site? And that's very similar to like people being out on Zillow or, Realtor.com and those kind of sites. Can we convert those kind of people into leads or for sale by owner.com? Like all that kind of stuff, right? It's the same kind of principles. It's just looking at the talent acquisition side of it. But a lot of times it's like we're willing to do like extreme things for our business when it comes to lead generation, but when it comes to our team, we're not willing to do that. So I would just encourage people, if you're building a team, obviously you're doing some things right on the lead generation side. Apply what you already know to the talent acquisition side, and maybe build a landing page for your team, and put ads out there on LinkedIn and Indeed, like this is what we're looking for, but have it be a continual process, right? Most people hire when they're in the need part of hiring already, which means that the first person that shows up that kind of looks good and says the right things, and you think that they're the right kind of, the resume looks okay, you're just going to hire them out of need, and then you're probably not even going to train them very well. So they're probably not going to work out that well. So if you kind of have a bench of candidates, right? If I've got 15 or 20 candidates to look at, and I can narrow it down to maybe the 5 that I really want to go deep on an interview process, and I can slow down the process and have multiple interviews and really get to know them, who they are, what's important to them, how do they want to win? Not just like, hey, you need to come work for me because I want to build a really big real estate team right now. It's like, what do you want? What's important to you and your family? What's something you've always wanted to do that you've never been able to do in your career before? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What does that look like? Why is that important to you? When you start to get to know people at that level, then again, you're going to find the alignment. Like, are we aligned to go into business together and win together in business? And again, that's more of a relational look at it than a transactional look of like, hey, I'm going to hire an employee based on their resume and their, Indeed profile, whatever it is. Now you're more slowing down the process, getting to know them. And that's hard to do because when you're busy, you want to shortcut that process. But that's where you're going to have to slow down to be able to go fast later, is hire the right people, pour into them, train them, and start helping them succeed. Because what will happen is within a couple of years, your world's going to start transforming, and you're going to start having way more money and way more time freedom.
Yep. Yeah, it is so nuts how little time most entrepreneurs spend in mastering the hiring process. Right?
Yep.
Like we'll spend so much time mastering our listing presentation, mastering a buyer presentation or scripts, whatever. And I'm guilty of that too. I was a team leader for almost 12 years before I got extremely intentional about and committed to, okay, I'm going to really start doing what I can to master this process, man. And it's, I'm as guilty as anybody with that. So then from there, man, as I reflect on people that I've hired over the past, and, this is, I guess, kind of theory, but, some of those people, like I look back at and I'm like, man, they were a great fit, but I just failed them as a leader. We didn't work out because, they were the right person. I just didn't give the right leadership, have the right training, the tools, the system. So, with that being said, you can hire maybe the right person for the job, but if you're not giving them the right training and the support to be successful in that role, it can still fail in that end of it too. So what are some advice that you would have? Let's just say that they do slow down and find that right person. What are some key things to ensure that person has success that we need to do as a leader?
Yeah, great question. The first thing is that, look, leadership is something that just takes longer to learn, right? John Maxwell says, if you look at the 10,000 hour rule, right? The rule is that if you spend 10,000 hours doing anything, you can master it. John Maxwell, which he's probably the leading authority on leadership in our time, says, look, leadership is 50,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours of actual study and 40,000 hours of field application. So the first thing to do is just like give yourself grace. Like you're not going to just knock it out of the park. There's no such thing as the perfect leader, right? I always tell people like there's no such thing as a natural born leader, right? A baby doesn't pop out and people are like, oh, this is a natural leader. We say leaders are forged. Leaders are people that have had the crap kicked out of them for many, many years. They're people that they've failed themselves, they've failed others, but they never quit, they never give up, and they always believe in getting better and serving at a higher level and learning the lessons, like internalizing the lessons. So I think it's one of these things that just, if you are committed to leadership, just realize it's going to be a process, and it's going to be a hard process, a challenging process. Now, with somebody coming to work for you, one of the things that really took the pressure off a lot for me is when I learned how to get to know people. And the other thing is I learned how to be vulnerable and say like, look, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I hired you and I want to like us to work together to solve this problem. So my initial blueprint of leadership kind of growing up was that the leader was strong and they knew all the answers, and they always kind of threw out the directive, like whatever problem there was, they were immediately ready to solve it. And now I've got a completely different view of leadership, is that, look, the leader is there to help develop the other people that are there, to help to teach them how to think, to help, bring the team together for collaboration. So the getting to know your people, which I said, you start that process in the hiring process, but really knowing who they are, what their skills are, what their strengths are, what they love doing, and then what they want, what are the wins that they want out of the team. So you hire them and you go really deep on those kind of things, and you put a plan together based on who they are and what they want, how you can help them win. Because if they start deviating from the plan, then the conversation is really simple. It's listen, I hired you. We got really clear on what you want, what's important to you, and how I can help you win based on this plan. You're not really showing up in the way right now that I can honor my side of really helping you win. Like those two things aren't aligning. So has something changed in what you want? Or, do we need to go back to like the commitment conversation, or are you missing a skill in being able to get that done? So let's work on this together. I want to help you succeed. You're important to this team. I care about you. How do we do this together? And invite them into the process. Let them know that, look, they are part of the process. And one of the biggest things too is if you've got a team, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 people, whatever it is, invite everybody's DNA into like who you are as a company and what you're doing and how to win. And there's a lot of work on now that's coming out on like how to build collaborative based teams, where it's not the top down leader that's telling everybody what to do, but it's a leader that's coming in and saying like, look, I'm going to create the environment and the space to invite your voice into what we're doing, and let's work together on making that happen. And I think taking that approach as a leader leaves you open to, it doesn't always have to be my way. I may not know what the best way is. I may have experience and kind of know the best way that I know how to do it. But I mean, you could hire somebody from a different industry. They jump into real estate and they're like, why are you doing it like this? This is a silly way to do it. And if you're like so adamant on your way of doing it, you're not even going to accept whatever they throw out, but say like, whoa, okay, you come from a different experience. Tell me how you would handle this. And when you allow other people's voices to start coming into what you're doing, they start buying into what you're doing at a higher level. They start experiencing more fulfillment because they're giving their time and effort and energy in a way that's being used. And it reminds me of a guy that we've got on our team right now, and he actually works for the Navy, and he's a platform developer. He codes for the Navy. And one of the things he loves about our team is that when he builds stuff for our team, he sees how it's being used and implemented, how it's changing people's lives. And he said it is so unfulfilling for him working for the Navy, because yes, he gets to work on these incredibly awesome projects. And he goes, most of the projects I build never get used, or they get changed right at the end to something else. Like it's continual, just change, or they don't get used. So for him, even though it's a great job, great paying, benefits, all that kind of stuff, he loves working for us. And we're transitioning full-time into our team right now, because he has fulfillment, because he has DNA in the process. And I think as a leader, invite your people into the process as much as possible and get your ego out of it. And one is, it's going to make being a leader way easier, because you don't have to solve all the problems. You become more of a facilitator of other people solving their own problems and learning how to think through it. So, for me, like that made leadership a lot easier when I took the focus off of me having to be right and tell people what to do versus just saying like, can I create a collaborative environment where people can come together, have fun together? Like that's the other thing, man. If you're not having fun in your business, you got to change what you're doing. I used to like be the guy that I thought like, and this is until like 4 years ago, that if you had fun at work, if somebody was laughing or smiling at work, I was like, they're not working. Right. So if you weren't like just down, like just grinding out, like you weren't working. So we've learned how to have a lot of fun, and that's done an amazing, it builds so much relational equity, right? Where you're going to need that equity at some point, but most teams run on very low relational and emotional equity to start with. And then when things get hard, they're starting to draw into the negative. It's like having a bank account with no money in it, and then you start going into overdraft. So if you keep that emotional and relational equity high, when things get hard, you can draw down on that bank account. You're not going to get into the red.
Yep. Love it, dude. So, one thing that, especially when people start, I guess, they start their team, they start hiring. And what I mean by team is talking about adding like an admin or so forth.
Yeah.
Difficult thing for a lot of people when they first start down that journey, man, is giving up certain tasks, having that trust, right?
Giving up control. Yeah.
What are some tips and advice? I heard a saying one time that your trust equates to what your capacity is, your level of trust in your people and so forth. And if we can't give up that trust and can't give up those tasks, that's going to keep our capacity low. And, what are some suggestions that you have for people just to be able to let go?
Yeah, I mean, great. And man, this is not just real estate agents. This is like in every business, right? Where people are just like, they're so, because the thought is nobody can do it as well as I can, right? My clients only want to work with me. They don't want to work with somebody on my team. And it's all just, it's all just BS. So the first thing you got to realize is that, look, have a belief system that whoever I hire for the task that I'm hiring them is actually going to be better than me at doing that task. Because we kind of have this belief system that we're good at everything. And especially if you're kind of a high achiever and like, you just kind of, it's just like this limiting belief that like you're good at everything. And one thing I've learned is that, man, like I am really, really good at very few things. And then there's a ton of stuff that I'm really bad at. So, but the first thing is just to realize, and it does, like, trust is earned, right? So there is a part of building that trust, but that's where if you know how to really hire people, if you got a great process for hiring people, it's kind of like this, like you got a really great process for taking a listing, right? So if I went over to my neighbor today and said, hey, you need to go take a listing of this person and go market that listing, they're not going to know what to do. They're not going to have a great process for it. So, it's probably not going to go really well. Hiring is the same thing. Do you have a great process for hiring? So if you got a great process, you're probably going to build a lot of trust in that process because you got a clear profile. That person comes in. But when that person comes in, start giving them tasks. And I love to push capacity in the first 30 days when I hire somebody. Like I stack it on and stack it on and stack it on because I want to see where their capacity line is. I want to see how quickly they're actually going to be willing to ask for help. And then I'm going to start seeing like, how do they handle pressure, right? When they start feeling like they're drowning a little, because one of the mistakes that people make is they don't push people hard for 6 months and then they want to stack it on. And that person's already built a habit that it's going to be easier to work here. So we stack on really quickly. So people build a habit when they work for us, like, man, we hit it hard here. But we also do it in a way that's very supportive. Like, hey, when you need for help, you need to ask for it. But the biggest thing is just like challenge your own belief system. Ask yourself the question like, hey, if I give this task and they screw this task, so what's the worst thing that can happen? Right? Could I miss out on a listing? Yes. Is that the worst thing that can happen? No. Like, I mean, is that bad? No. But you miss out on listings all the time. Are they going to piss off a buyer? Maybe. Right? If I make a buyer mad, is that the end of the world? No. So just realize like whatever they're going to screw up is probably not going to be that significant. And yes, they're probably going to make some mistakes. It's going to cost you some money at some point, but that's going to be way less of an expense than the expense of you hitting capacity and not being able to fulfill the capacity needs that your clients have or your lead generation produces. And it's also way less expensive than the time that you're not getting to spend with your family or your health going or the high levels of stress that are like just, eating away at you. So it's just a process of just realizing, look, if I hire somebody for a job, my expectation is they're going to do that job really well and do it better than I can. And that's why I hired them. Don't hire somebody if you don't believe that, because if you don't believe that, you're always going to treat somebody in a way that you're never going to maximize their potential, right? And I mean, when somebody's working with you, like, you're the kind of guy, right? Like if you're in a situation, you're going to say, give me the ball, let me run with the ball. Like, don't try to micromanage me. Don't try to, And most talented people out there are the same way, whether they're an administrator. Like people think like, oh, like drivers just rule the world and, you know, you got to be the certain way. And what I've learned is like some of the most incredible people that are part of building amazing businesses are those people that are kind of in the back end. There are those people that are a little bit quieter. And if you can learn how to work with those people and help them succeed, like they will truly transform your life. But the big thing is that you got to realize, one is like, I'm not good at everything. And what do I need to really spend my time and effort and energy on? And I was always taught in the real estate world is that, look, if you're the team leader, you are lead generating, you're meeting with listing agents, and you're negotiating real estate, like, or listing clients, and you're negotiating real estate. Like those are the three things that you need to be focusing on, and hire an administrator to do everything else. So, but it's a hard thing, right? Most people actually don't get there because they make the active choice to get there. Most people get there because they are in a place of pain so long they can't help but to hand stuff off, because if they don't, they just run out of time. So I do find that most people are too hard-headed to kind of just like be proactive about the whole process, and usually they get to a place of pain. Like most of the clients that we work with in our business are people that have already hit about $1.5 to $2 million of revenue or GCI in their business, because we find that a lot of people that are still kind of new and building it, they believe that through their intelligence and their sheer drive and will and effort, they're going to be able to figure it all out and do it all. And then after they've been beat up for a while, they're like, okay, there's got to be a better process now, and now I'm ready to learn it.
Yeah, love it, dude. So on kind of the, I guess the flip side of that, you know, a mistake that I've made and being honest, continue to make, is when I discover somebody's the wrong person, holding them on, like waiting too long to let that person go. You know, because as a leader, I'm always like, oh, it's my responsibility. I didn't train them well enough. And I keep giving them chance after chance after chance and so forth. At what point, if somebody's not working out, like, is it time to, I guess, offboard and handle that situation? Like what are maybe some of those red flags that, hey, maybe this isn't the right person? And then what kind of proactive steps are you taking to see if it's, you know, something that is a leadership issue with me as the leader, or if hey, this is indeed the wrong person, we need to offboard them?
Yeah, the first thing is I love what you said, that you check with yourself first to say like, hey, is this an issue with me and my leadership? Because that's always the first question that anybody should ask. Like, how am I failing this person at this time? Is this something that we can correct through me doing something different, spending a little bit more time with them, having the conversation a little bit differently? So I think like that's the starting point. But here's what I want to get down to as fast as possible is this a skill issue where they don't have the right skill set, or they don't have the right process or tool or something like that? Or is it a commitment issue? Because if it's a skills issue or something else in that arena, we can work on that and we can start moving them forward. But if it's a commitment issue on their side, that they're not committed to doing the job at a high level, or they're not committed to learning or getting better, or that they're not committed to the vision and mission of the team, then it's a very short conversation for me. Right. And for me, I've just learned, like, if people are committed, I'm going to give them more time. Right. Because I mean, I've worked with people now that it may take them a little bit longer to kind of get their skills wise, to really kind of get the process really humming and kind of really get it done. But as long as they're committed and they're showing that they're learning based and that it's important to them and they care about the job, they care about being part of that team, they care about the organization and their teammates, I'm going to give them more time to develop into it. If I sense, and through the way they show up and their attitude and their actions, if I sense that it's a commitment issue where they're just not committed to doing the job, or they're not committed to being on that team and being a great player, then the timeline gets massively short for me, right? Then I'm going to really stack on the pressure. And the goal that I was always taught with Keller Williams is that, you know, Gary Keller talks about this. He goes, get people to step up or step out. But you can't let somebody just stay where they are. Like, they're either going to move forward and show you that they're committed and they want to learn and do better, or if they're not willing to do that, you have to get them to step out of the organization. So that's kind of the key for me, is like, hey, is this a skills issue or something in that arena, or is this a commitment issue where they're not committed to moving forward?
Yep, love it. And you know, with, as at least at the time that we're recording this, you know, we're still kind of in the middle of this COVID-19 craziness. And, you know, for the first time, a lot of people are having to go virtual, you know, and it's it's been an adjustment for a lot of people, and it can, if I guess you don't know how to pivot correctly, can potentially impact culture and so forth. Just because you're not having that daily camaraderie, you're not seeing people's energy, what they're working on, and so forth. What are some of the keys that you would give to people, like if this going on? And look, man, I have some staff that have always been in house that now they're loving the virtual component, and they're asking if they can stay virtual forever. Right? And I mean, if they're getting the results, I want to honor that. But what are things that can be done, I guess, to maintain the same culture, maintain the same results, show people that you care when you're not seeing them in the office and having that same camaraderie?
Yeah, I mean, one of the foundational things that we've been doing, and I've been doing this probably since about 2000 or early 2013, is we do a stand-up huddle every single day. We're kind of back working at the office now, but I'm working a lot more from home, and our team is kind of virtual around the country too. But one thing I've learned is even during COVID, we did virtual huddles. So everybody gets on Zoom and everybody kind of checks in. And the virtual huddle is kind of two parts. One is to everybody just kind of check in. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And part two is, what are the most important things that, you've got to focus on today? And same thing, like, hey, is there anything yesterday that got in the way? Because it's a way for the team. I want to train the team to learn how to help each other. It's not just about me helping the team. I don't have the capacity to help my team all the time, but what I do have the capacity to do is help my team help each other all the time. So I think one thing, if teams aren't doing quick huddles, 15, 20-minute huddles in the morning, whether it's in person or virtual, I think that's a way that very quickly you can build some great team camaraderie. When COVID hit and we had to go fully virtual from our local team here, we did a morning huddle and kind of a 5 p.m. huddle. And I know it's something that may be harder in the real estate world because everybody's out, actually doing transactions.
Also using, sorry, my headset just died. Also using something like Slack and just kind of, for internal communication, because the thing about it is, it's still just the little touch points of showing that, hey, how are you doing? Just want to check in, or, sending a message, having that communication. And then I really think if teams aren't getting together outside of the workplace, like that's something that can massively boost culture. And there's not it's surprising how few teams actually do that. And it doesn't have to be something extravagant. And it could just be, a cookout at somebody's house, or, I mean, like we've done simple stuff, like just go to the movies together, right? I mean, that requires zero work. Like you pay some money and you just sit there and you're entertained. You don't even have to, but going to the movies together, going to a place like Top Golf together. So we try to do at least a monthly get together for our team where it's outside of work. The team pays for it. We just do, and we don't do like extravagant, expensive stuff. I mean, it's just like little stuff that we do, but kind of having that daily morning check-in, and then also, the events outside of work, I think build a lot of connectiveness in the team. And then between the leaders and their people, your one-on-ones are critical. So having that weekly one-on-one where you're just checking in with somebody and not making the one-on-one meeting 100% about the KPIs, because I think a lot of people do that. It's like as soon as a person walks in, they sit down, and it's almost like they're just being drilled on the KPIs. And but again, making it relational, like, hey, how are things going at home? How's it going with the family and like COVID-19, right? I know that you guys usually take a big summer trip together, but this year you weren't able to take your trip. You had to cancel your trip. How are you guys dealing with that? And one of the things that I learned from a leadership perspective is I used to believe that don't bring like personal stuff into the workplace. And when that was my belief, there was always drama. And today we're way more open and talking about like something's going on at home, like, hey, I need some support here. And what happens is when you're open to kind of helping people navigate some of those challenges they have outside of the workplace as well, then what happens is the level of drama in the workplace like massively go down. So I think as leaders, be willing to have those conversations that are also just checking in on them as a human being and outside of work. The morning huddles are awesome. And then spending some time together as a team outside of work, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, love it, man. So, I know we're going long on time, dude, but I want to, if you can, just share a little bit about, what BERGflow does. Because look, man, I'm in a coaching course right now on YouTube, right, with the algorithms changing and all the SEO work and titles. And again, us as real estate agents and entrepreneurs, we spend so much time in training courses and coaching on these other things, but not near enough time on probably the most important element to any business, which is the work that you guys do. So, just kind of, what is it that you guys, what can people expect? Just kind of walk us through that and where everybody can learn more about BERGflow and the services that you guys offer.
Yeah, so essentially what we really specialize in is helping companies build great teams. And that's really teams that are empowered teams and collaborative based teams, because it's not just about hiring people and having a lot of people that are employees that are connected to one person telling them what to do. We believe that if you truly want to experience the higher levels of success and freedom, that you're going to have to build teams that are self-empowered and collaborative based teams. And the research actually shows that when you're able to build teams like that, there's a higher level of fulfillment, a higher level of buy-in, and a higher level of productivity that come out of that. And so that creates a better culture, it creates longevity as well. And it doesn't matter, if people have 3 people, 30 people, or 300 people in their business, there's always going to be points in time where, you feel a little bit stuck. You may not know kind of how to move forward. But as companies grow, the human side of it is usually where people get stuck a lot, right? Because once you really, start figuring out the levers on lead generation, you start building your brand, and you start building a bigger database, usually the place where you're going to start falling short is, having the right people on your team to be able to handle the amount of business that's coming in. And a lot of companies grow really fast. And they, just like you said, they focus on all those kind of more technical type aspects of lead generation and servicing, and they don't focus on their internal team. So what we do is, we kind of bring in a system, and we call it like a human operating system, right? It's kind of, how are you going to handle the human side of your business? Like, how are you going to make sure that you bring the right people in from the start, that there's a thorough understanding around the behavioral component. We have a cognitive component as well. So we can make sure that from a learning perspective, you understand how much training and how much you can put on somebody's plate for them to digest. And then also from an emotional intelligence standpoint. So those are the 3 assessments that we use to really make sure that people are the right fit. And a lot of the work that we do too is we actually go into companies and assess their current people to make sure that, hey, there's not some tweaks that need to be had inside the company, and kind of maybe take this off of this person's plate, move them over here. But once you get those kind of things figured out, then it's, how do we continually pour into our people to help them grow, to help them develop? And the fastest thing that you can do as a leader, if you want freedom, is you got to teach your key people on how they can be the ones that now go out and hire and train and lead other people. So we work on decentralizing that process within a company, because as long as one person owns all of that, they are never going to have freedom. So, we just got a system that's what we focus on, right? Because here's our thought is, our clients already know how to do the thing that they know how to do, right? We're not going to, I've spent a lot of time in the real estate industry, but, I've been out of the industry now for 3 years. And I can tell you, like, in 3 years, there's probably so much that's changed already that, I'm not going to tell somebody what they need to do a better listing presentation. They already know that. But what we're going to do is we're going to teach somebody how to scale their business through hiring the right people, through building the right teams. And that's really what we specialize in, is the human side of it. So that's kind of what we've done. And we've put a program together where you get software, you get the assessments, you get training and coaching on it. And what we've done is, our goal was to take top level consulting type software and training and give it to people at, like lower subscription based pricing, so that they don't have to go out and spend, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in getting that kind of access to technology and training and coaching. But it's more something that somebody can implement in their team, and then they use it and their people use it to manage the human side of the business. So that's what we do.
Yeah, love it, man. And is it just at BERGflow.com, or where's the best place to go learn more about it? And
that's it. Yep. Just BERGflow.com, BERGflow, nice and simple.
All right, awesome. And those watching, listen, wherever you're at, we'll have a link right below. So whatever medium that you're listening or watching this, there'll be a link right below for you to go check that out, and highly recommend that you do. So one last question for you here. Knowing everything you know now today, and you've been involved in so many ventures, so this may be tough, or maybe it won't be, but knowing everything that you know now today, if Dirk today could go back and have a conversation with Dirk, in your early 20s when you're first starting your entrepreneur journey, and give yourself 2 pieces of advice that you feel would have just made a massive impact on the success journey that you've been on, what would those 2 pieces of advice look like?
Yeah, and I mean, man, what a great question. I think the first thing that I would say, and this is kind of like an African proverb, but it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go with others. And I mean, I would probably just give myself that piece of advice and just try to go is like actually have myself understand that, because that's something that translates not just into business, it translates into outside of business too. Like our human tendency is like, I'll just do it. And well, I'll just, and we withdraw and we kind of go internal and we kind of get more committed to like, I'll just go do this. But it's always a thing of we can do it faster today. I can do it faster today, but I can't go further tomorrow. And if I would have understood that in my truly understood that in my early 20s and started my journey of studying that, 10 years before I actually did, I think that my life would be a lot different today. But I am so thankful that I actually learned how to do that, in my early 30s, because we work with people that are in their mid 50s, early 60s that are running businesses that are just starting to learn this now. And I mean, what happens is you just give up a lot to your business, right? You know how demanding a business can be when it's growing and there's a lot going on, there's a lot of moving parts, and the people around us are the ones that pay the price, right? Our team pays the price, our families pay the price, our friends pay the price. So when you truly learn to go at it with others, life just becomes sweeter.
Yep. Love it, man. Powerful stuff. And Dirk, I know how busy you are and taking time out of busy to be here, man. I truly appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun and a huge honor, my friend.
Joshua, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for just having me on the show. And it's an honor to be on the show too, man. I've listened to quite a few of your episodes and, seeing you on Facebook and stuff like that too. So it's really cool to be here with you, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, 100% truly means a lot. And those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you being here. Truly appreciate all your support. Keep up the amazing work. Keep kicking ass, and we'll see you next time. Peace. I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.